Malcolm Turnbull and Bill Shorten diverted their campaigns today to visit storm-damaged parts of Tasmania. With floodwaters subsiding, the Prime Minister said federal disaster relief was on the way. And while acknowledging that extreme weather is on the rise, he wouldn't blame the storm on climate change. Andrew Green reports.
The rain's lightened off, but to an outsider's eyes, the raging torrent rushing through Launceston is as confronting as ever. For the second day this week, both leaders put aside their regular campaign stoushes.
So what's important is to get people back as quickly as we can to their lives.
To offer comfort to those who'd lost property or worse.
My uncle was the man that was washed away down at Ouse.
Oh, really?
They haven't found yet, so
I didn't know
he's still missing, and
I didn't know that.
The whole family's sort of getting behind everyone.
Again, there were pledges of emergency federal financial assistance.
Relief arrangements which will provide some immediate support to farmers and businesses and, of course, households as well.
This is a delicate visit for Malcolm Turnbull and Bill Shorten. Both have come as national leaders to lend their support, but the drenched regions of northern Tasmania span 3 marginal seats on less than 4%. Not that either is overtly campaigning today. As both leaders got a close-up look at the devastation,
you can see over here the sheer force of the water. That's torn bitumen off, ripped it off the road and thrown it across the paddocks.
questions turned to whether the changing climate was to blame for the destructive weather.
Attributing any particular event to climate change is just not sustainable. But there is no question that we live in the land of droughts and flooding rains, and fires too.
Today for me is not a day where I'm going to start joining the dots about extreme weather events.
Whatever the cause, the damage bill from this event's already topping $100 million. Andrew Green, ABC News, Launceston.
The war of words over whose economic plan will guide the budget out of deficit is reaching new intensity. The government is zeroing in on Labor's admission that it would drive the budget deeper into deficit if it wins the election. But there are doubts about whether either side can deliver the surplus they say they can within 5 years. National Affairs correspondent Greg Jennett reports.
The fight for economic credibility takes not one but 2 plans to get to exactly the same budget destination, a surplus in 5 years.
It's very clear how we get there.
Sees our budget return to balance at exactly the same time, whether you have a Liberal government or a Labor government.
They share the same goal but don't agree how to get there. Between now and the surplus year lies $84 billion worth of deficits. Now, in the name of honesty, Labor's promising to drive those deficits deeper. How deep, we don't know, but it carries risk because debt goes up.
I've called it out. I've been honest and said I think the AAA rating is under threat.
And because it invites an obvious response.
If you vote Labor at this election, they will give you higher deficits and they will give you a higher debt.
If you vote Liberal, there are risks you'll end up with higher deficits and debt too. Those deficit columns will be much longer if the coalition wins and the next Senate refuses to pass what Labor calls zombie cuts, savings like family tax benefit changes and making young people wait a month for the dole. The coalition's banking on them being passed. All up, they're worth $18 billion.
For the government to assume that those $18 billion of measures will pass is fiscal recklessness.
And if the red ink over 4 years seems overwhelming, what about 10? Other than its $48 billion company tax cuts, the government doesn't even publish costings over a decade, whereas Labor's relying on them.
We've made the tough decisions. I mean, we didn't choose to reform negative gearing for fun. We didn't think it would be popular.
Labor are making promises in this election with money that just isn't there.
So Bill Shorten's gambling that a dose of deficit honesty in the short term will buy Labor some credit beyond the next election. That's after this one. The numbers will be argued all the way up to polling day. But it's worth noting neither side will guarantee they'll actually deliver the surplus when their projections say they will.